100 years, Rick and Morty some things. Me and Rick and Morty running around in Rick and Morty time. All day long, forever. 100 days, Rick and Morty forever, 100 times. Over and over, rickandmortyadventures.com. www.rickandmorty.com. www.rickandmortyadventures. All 100 years.
Rick and Morty is one of my all-time favorite shows. I'm talking top 5 easily. It's the only animated show that somehow manages to take hilarious and kinda sus comedy and also the greatest, most unpredictable plot of all time and somehow smush it together to make one of the greatest and most highly rated TV shows. But has the show lost its spark? If you haven't actually watched this show, let me tell you a bit about it. So we got an alcoholic, sociopathic, messed up in all kinds of ways, mad scientist grandpa called Rick Sanchez, who has figured out a way to travel between parallel dimensions with this neat little invention of his called the portal gun. We also got his grandson slash sidekick Morty, who's a 14-year-old who basically just does what other teenagers do.
What do you mean by that?
This guy Morty, he's also pretty stupid if I do say so myself. Anyways, he and Rick are basically polar opposites and these two go on all sorts of crazy adventures through 7 different seasons. They do all kinds of things from slaying dragons to just watching intergalactic TV for an entire episode. It's kinda just what they do. I feel like the best way to tell you how great this show really is to just tell you about the greatest episode that has ever been made yet. Now, this episode is currently rated 9.8 out of 10 on IMDb. Now, this episode is called the Ricklantis Mixup, and it's in season 3, episode 7. And to put it simply, this episode is cinema. I think that this review spells it out really well. Muhammad Mohsin 9 left a review on September the 10th, 2017 where he said, 10 out of 10, easily the best. One of my friends once said he wanted to know what kind of weed do you have to smoke to come up with such brilliance. This episode reminded me exactly of what genius the writers are capable of. Best so far this season. And it has been for a while. Not just that season, but I think probably so far in the entire show itself. We see the citadel of Rick's and Morty's after Rick destroys the entire thing in a previous episode. We don't really talk about that though. And we also see one of the coldest villains, I think, of TV cinema history say one of the best quotes of all time. This seems like a good time for a drink and a cold, calculated speech with sinister overtones. A speech about
politics, about order, brotherhood, power. But speeches are for campaigning. Now is the time for action.
Is that not absolute fire? Bro's just aura farming at this point, and he cannot be stopped. I do not know who was responsible for coming up with that, but that right there is a masterpiece in itself. Those 2 sentences were sending shiverings down my timbers, I'm telling you. And it made me feel some kind of way, if you know what I mean. One of the weirdest and most intriguing things about this show is the animation style. It is incredibly detailed but also really simple. All of this is the work of James McDermott and Jeffrey Thompson. We also have Brent Knoll, who's responsible for leading the creation of all props you see in Rick and Morty, from a pen to a poster on Morty's bedroom. This guy has a seriously busy schedule, and when I say busy, I mean busy. Literally everything is carefully designed, full of little Easter eggs, which I won't point out because reasons, yeah. But then you got the master storytelling, which is just mind-blowing. If you have watched the show, then you know. And if you know, you know. Seriously, it's like every episode is a high-end Hollywood blockbuster film made by drunk middle-aged men. That's exactly what it is. How can you have incredibly smart jokes, hidden in toilet humor and toilet humor hidden in incredibly smart jokes.
What?
That takes some serious creativity.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Another thing that this show does really well is show and not tell. All master storytellers are amazing at doing this, and Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland are no exception. Every character feels like the main character in a good way. You realize that there are layers to them, and almost every episode introduces a new character or a mini villain. Then you have the big overarching antagonist of the entire show. Or should I say, two big overarching antagonists, but I won't really spoil it for the guys who haven't watched. Neither of these guys are fully explored, but the show always feels complete. Like there's absolutely nothing you could add that would make it better. Another big fat reason as to why the show is so great is because you can have theories about stuff. RIP Matt Pat. There's so much going on in the show and such deep questions being addressed that's kind of hard not to. Like, what happens when we die? For a man who can basically never die, which is Rick Sanchez, how does life even seem worth living? Does it seem worth living, or is he just running from death? You see what I mean? Like, I've never been the sharpest tool in the shed, but this show even got me deep in life. The ability to go from Mr. Poopy Butthole to contemplating suicide is insane. Like, I'm literally saying that the show is insane. But that's why it's so good, you know? It can go into uncharted territory and somehow still be perfectly relatable to a normal person who doesn't travel interdimensionally through space and time. That ability to do crazy, unrealistic, indescribable adventures and still have the solid relationship of a kid and his grandpa shine through is insane. The show definitely has its flaws, like how Morty hasn't aged from season 1 to 7, but it's clear that that's how the directors want it. So all in all, just watch Rick and Morty.